Good morning, and thank you for viewing the Facebook fan page and the YouTube channel for the Law Office of Travell Travis. Our firm focuses on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and citizens in our community. We invite you to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. Also visit our website, travelltravis.com. You can email us at travelltravis@gmail.com, or you can contact us by telephone at area code 757-528-8529. Just as a disclaimer, our videos are for educational and advertising purposes and is not a substitute for consulting a licensed attorney in your state, nor creates a attorney-client relationship. Today's legal lesson I want to present is, can I change my will, my last will and testament? In short, the answer is yes. Will typically does not become final until the death of the testator and can be changed really as many times as necessary as long as the person is still alive and has the requisite mental capacity. I mean, a person could be alive, but if they're in the late stages of Alzheimer's or dementia or in a coma, they're alive, but they're not in the capacity to change their will. Recently in the news, we heard of the passing of John Singleton. It's estimated his worth is around $35 million. We are fortunate learned that he was responsible and drafted a will back in 1993, leaving everything to his only child. However, the problem has arisen that he had 6 more children after his will was drafted, and he never updated his will to include those additional children, nor expressed intent to exclude those children. So now his family is in court fighting over this $35 million estate. Wills can be updated one of 2 ways, either by revocation, which is essentially canceling an old will and starting over. Maybe it's too hard to just amend it. We're just going to scrap it and start over. Or the second method is essentially through having a codicil or an amendment. I want to make a slight change, slight revision, add somebody, take somebody out, but pretty much the structure of the will is to remain intact. Ideally, one should review and perhaps revise the will annually. And once again, there's no limit really on how many times you change or update your will. The only real limit is when there's death or prior to death, there is incapacity such that the person is not capable of changing, revising, canceling, revoking, or amending their will. I want to present to you 4 triggers, if you will, perhaps as to when you should consider reviewing, perhaps revising, or even revoking your will. Number 1 is a change in family. Perhaps there's births, there are deaths, there are marriages of yourself or even of your children, grandchildren. Perhaps there's divorces of yourself or even of your children or grandchildren. Perhaps there's remarriages. Perhaps there are adoptions, which adopted children are included typically as a part of the family, blood family, but you might want to speak specifically to adoptions. We're living in a time of more blended families where a person may be someone's stepmother, stepfather, has raised their child, but unless that person has adopted that child would not be included in the estate plan unless there is a will that specifically includes that blended family member, that child of a spouse or whomever that you've raised You've raised them as if they're your own, but unless you've adopted them or include them in the will, they would not benefit or receive from the will, unless somehow they're part of your family and some other dynamic. The addition of additional generations. Maybe you did your will when you only had children. Children were small. Now your children are grown. Now you have grandchildren. Perhaps you have great-grandchildren. And so does your will speak to the addition of other generations? Another scenario under change of family is just overall family relationships. We're not talking about just mere spats or mere disagreements, but there are times when family ties, family relationships are so complicated, so severed, so damaged, to where an individual may decide to reduce or to eliminate that person from the will. And so all these fall under number one, changes in family. Number two, changes in finances. How have your finances changed since you first wrote your will? Perhaps there was a change in job, change in salary, change in benefits. Perhaps you've been promoted on your job. Perhaps you're retired from a job. Maybe you're a student, you've graduated, you've got an extra degree, whether it's a GED, whether it's a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, a professional degree. How does that change your finances? Perhaps you moved to a different state, purchased a home in a different state, started a job in a different state. What are the laws regarding a will in that state or governing the land in that state? Perhaps you've experienced unfortunate bankruptcy, divorce. Perhaps you won or lost a judgment, a lawsuit. Perhaps you started a new business. Perhaps even you earned extra sources of income through royalties, starting a business. And so you want to include those in your will. Perhaps also, unfortunately, your family member has experienced some type of criminal liability. Perhaps someone has been charged or convicted of a misdemeanor, a felony. Perhaps a person has demonstrated irresponsibility. Maybe there's drug addiction. Maybe there's some financial debt. And you say, well, if I leave this amount of money to this person, it's going to all go to paying off their debts, or they're going to squander it, or they're going to use it on drugs or alcohol, or some other issue that may make them less eligible, if you will, to be a recipient of that money. Number three, changes in assets or property. If the will is supposed to govern the passing down of your property to your heirs, what changes have made? Maybe you have purchased a larger home. Maybe you've even downsized. Maybe you've gotten rid of a home and now you're traveling in a Winnebago. Maybe you have a condo. Maybe you have a vacation home. How does that affect you? In your will, you're leaving the family house, but the family house was sold. So now what happens? Perhaps you've purchased land, sold land, purchased vehicles, sold vehicles. In your will, you said, I'm leaving my Mercedes, but you got rid of the Mercedes 10 years ago. So now what happens? Perhaps you have other investments in stock or in real estate. Maybe you have boats or other rental properties, stocks, collector's items, whether it's books, maybe it's musical collections, maybe it's an art collection, maybe it's clothing. And so maybe those items need to be addressed one way or the other, as well as new businesses that you may have started, businesses that you may have closed, intellectual property. We think about patents, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets. You've written a book, you've written a song, you've written a play, you started a restaurant, and your secret sauce is now worth several $1 million. You started a clothing line. And so where are those things included in the will? You also may have inherited property yourself. Maybe a family member left you a house, left you some land, left you some money. And so have you included what you've inherited from somebody else in your will to be passed down to another individual? Number four, the fourth trigger in which you may want to consider revising, updating your will. It's a change in health. Every year you're getting older. Maybe not every year you want to review your will, but maybe set yourself on a schedule every 2 years, every 5 years. I want to revise or review my will. Perhaps you've been diagnosed with a medical condition, maybe not terminal or fatal. Maybe you've been diagnosed with diabetes. It's not that it's fatal, but perhaps it just reminds you of your mortality and say, okay, I need to make sure I have my will and make sure my will is up to date. Maybe you've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Unfortunately, maybe you've been diagnosed with cancer, early stages of Alzheimer's, early stages of dementia, or some other terminal or chronic illness to say, you know what, okay, I need to make sure everything is in place because now I'm reminded of my perhaps mortality. Mental illness, early stages of diagnosis of mental illness. Perhaps also an accident or injury, car accident, slip and fall, may also be times where we say, okay, I need to review my will. One, assume we have a will, but assuming we do, to review that will and make sure it accurately reflects our present intentions as best as possible. This is not a complete list, but should give you an idea of perhaps when a person should review, revise, perhaps revoke, or amend a will. Remember, number one, have a will. If you have children, you have property, and you care who gets what, number one, make sure you have a will. Number two, if you have a will, make sure it is up to date to reflect present conditions. As I gave you 4 things to consider: change in family, change in finance, change in assets or property, change in health. And then number 3, update the will to reflect those changes. So it's not only good to recognize them, but actually contact your lawyer, go through the proper procedure to get the will revoked or amended. And then number 4, make sure the right people have the correct, most up-to-date, accurate version of the will. One of the things that will create a will contest is there are multiple versions of the will circulating around. And there's, well, this one said this and this one said that. So on one hand, it's good that you made the changes, but now we don't know which change is the final change because either the lawyer or the executor under the will or whomever, the designated person, doesn't know where the will is. The only one they can find is the one from way back when. And somebody else said, well, I think they went to the lawyer and got that changed some years ago. And so now there's this issue of, okay, where's the most up-to-date will? And so you want to make sure that once you've gone through this process, that the will that's the most accurate, most current, is in the hands of the right person so that when the time comes, they can properly implement that will. Once again, we want to thank you for viewing this legal lesson sponsored by the Law Office of Travell Travis. These videos are for educational and promotional purposes. And it's not a substitute for contacting a licensed attorney in your state. We always invite you to like and share these videos, especially if it's a benefit to someone, but also to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. Also visit our website, travelltravis.com. Email us at travelltravis@gmail.com or call us at area code 757-528-8529. Once again, God bless you and have a great day.